Well, what's up, everybody? This is version 99, and we're bringing back the EVE Online tutorials. Now, the reason we're doing this is that CCP Games recently put out a dev blog explaining that there will be a new... It's kind of a confusing way to put it. They call it a free-to-play model, but it's not a free-to-play model like you might expect from other free-to-play titles like Star Trek Online. Basically what they're doing is they're taking the 21-day trial and the kind of limitations it has, and they're expanding them slightly, contracting them in other places, and letting it run forever. So it's more along the lines of World of Warcraft's level 20 forever trial. You can play the game up to level 20, and once you get to level 20, I mean, that's your level cap. They're kind of doing a similar thing here. They're being very heavily skill restricted. And of course, skills are what's needed to unlock new command of new ships, new models, do things like certain tasks in industry and science. So I decided that since it is sparking a great deal of interest in the greater gaming community, and as a personal reason, I do have a relative who said they want to try EVE, and well, anyone who wants to understand why I'm doing this, just Google EVE Learning Cliff and look at the photos you get in the image results, and that'll explain it. Now, first episode we'll do is a little bit of basic interface here. Now, obviously, I'm in a station of some sort. I'm actually in, up here you can see Jita. That's the name of the current solar system I'm in. Its security status, this indicates how much law and order there is in the system. 1.0 to 0.5 is considered high security space. This is a space actively owned by an NPC empire, and it is patrolled by an organization called Concord. If you do bad things here, you can do bad things here because there is no PvP free areas in EVE, unlike, say, Elwyn Forest on a PvP server in WoW. The minute you click this undock button here, you consent to PvP. So the first rule of EVE is to never fly anything you can't afford to replace, because EVE is a permanent loss game. So let's just get that out of the way right out front. You can see I'm in a very high security system in the constellation known as Kimatoro, in a region of space known as the Forge. And as you can see, we'll pull up the map. EVE's universe is very vast. You'll see many of these green, blue, and yellow dots. These are all little stars in high security space. The yellow ones, like this over here, are known as low security space. It's 0.4 to 0.1. They're still technically owned by the empires, although some regions are in contention as the various empires fight over territory through the mechanics called faction warfare, which we'll discuss in another episode. This is kind of like the lawless, no, it's the semi-lawless frontier. It's kind of like the Wild Wild West. And then you have the red. The great big amount of red. This is known as null security space. Anything with a security rating below 0. Here there is no law. There is no empires. The law is the law of the gun. Some of these regions, which you can see, for example, Stain, Curse, these regions are owned by NPC space pirates. You can dock in their stations, but they're not very well developed because they're the domain of pirates. Sometimes a pirate faction will have a small presence. For example, Fountain has one constellation that is owned by a pirate faction. The same goes for Delve. They have one constellation that's owned by they have one, or I actually believe it's one or two constellations that's owned by a pirate faction. The rest of this space is known as SOV, null security, and it can be owned. You won't be able to do the owning yourself because of the limitations on alpha accounts, but you can join those groups. But that'll be a topic for another episode as well. Okay, now the main thing is the core limitations of an alpha account. And they can be pretty intensive. In fact, I'm going to pull up the website and get the list. Now, because each race is very specific about their strengths, there are some skills that others will be able to train that you won't be able to train. And normally, your choice of race between the 4 empires doesn't. How should I put this? Doesn't really have a bearing for normal players who pay for a sub, because we can cross-train any ship. I'll give you an example. This is my more combat-oriented character. Now he's a Caldari character. As you can see, I have a Mark battle cruiser, a Mark battleship. Of course, Caldari. I have Galente skills trained, as well as Minmatar, the 4th race here. So I'm able to actually cross-train into any other race I want. I can also train up to advanced ships. I'll give you an example in the ship tree. As soon as I know what the heck it is. Ship tree. Ship tree. You can see there's a lot of items you can pull up. There it is. I don't use this very often, that's why I don't know where it is. Alright. Now, I'll get this away from this so you can see it. Here are the different groups that make ships. I have the Amar, Caldari, Galente, the Minmatar. Then we have pirate factions. This is guys like Orr, the guys who make the mining ships. Then we have the Garistas, Sancha, the Blood Raiders, Angels, the Serpentis, the Sisters of Eve, and Morty's Legion. Now, alphas are going to be fairly limited in their tech tree. Now, because this character is a Caldari, we'll go with, I'll show you an example, but this character will be able to fly. The minute I stop subscribing on this character, I'll be able to fly these here, the regular frigates, the Navy frigates. I will not be able to fly any of these ships. So this logistics frigate, which I don't have the skill to do because I never got around to buying the logistics frigate skill. Then you've got the electronic attack ship, and these, anything with a 2 beside it, or anything with a 3 beside it. In this example, the Jackdaw, I would not be able to fly. I could fly these 2, these destroyers, and I'll be able to fly these cruisers down here at the bottom, and the Navy cruisers. Anything with a 2 or a 3 beside it would be off limits, and my wall is here. No battle cruisers. You won't be able to train the requisite skill for Caldari battle cruiser. So your ship selection boils down to 1, 7, 9, 11, 15 ships in your tech tree, from the lowly rookie ship all the way up to the 4 cruisers. Let's see, the Osprey, the Caracal, the Moa, and the Blackbird. Now that's pretty rough, but you will have the shuttle. You will also have the industrials. So you'll be able to haul, you'll have basic haulers, freighter, jump freighter you won't have. That's the super big hauler, and you won't have that. Which is a good thing, because freighters are expensive. But that is a basic idea of what you're going to be limited to. It doesn't seem like a lot, especially if you come, for example, WoW, where a level 20, you get in a duel with like a level 30, and he can just whip your ass. You swing at him, you swing at him, swing at him, and you're not really doing much of anything. Eve doesn't actually work like that. If you have decent piloting skills and you understand what you're doing, even in these ships, these little frigates, you can make a difference. A little example would be this little bugger right here, the Griffin. Now this is support an electronic warfare ship. Its job is to essentially provide a debuff to enemy targets. It's not one for a stand-up fight, but ECM target jammers render the enemy unable to target anything for 20 seconds. These little guys are the bane of big, ponderous, slow ships that can't hit these little buggers. Another example is small combat ships like the Merlin. They can be used to hold down larger ships. so that your friends can pound them to dust. Things they couldn't do unless you, flying super close and going really fast, can't do, because the bigger ship can't hit you because you're too small and you're too fast. So you can contribute even in large fleet engagements in these ships. Another example would be the repair ships. For example, the Bantam and the Osprey. You can be a somewhat decent space healer. You don't get the high-end ships, the Tech 2 logistics ships, but sometimes a little bit of repair is enough to keep one of your friends in the fight. So even in these little ships, you can make a difference. Will you lose ships? Most definitely. Are they cheap as heck to replace? Yes, except for the Navy ones. The Navy ones are harder to come by. But, for example, I have blueprints for all of these ships. And, I mean, it's a pittance to make these things. I have max research blueprints. I can crank these out like no one's business. And so do a lot of other people in the game. So, and on paper, the restrictions for certain activities are pretty harrowing. I mean, you're not going to become a super powerful space miner with a free account, because you only get this little guy, the mining frigate. You can't really, you can't get anything else. Unfortunately, you're also not able to use Tech 2 modules, which are like ship parts. And I will give you an example. Let's go with Blackbird. Okay, this is my Blackbird, one of the Caldari cruisers. This is the jamming and support cruiser. Think that Griffin I talked about on PCP. People hate Griffins. People really hate Blackbirds because they're tougher and they have stronger energy jamming. Now, the modules you fit to a ship give them different abilities. Now, this one is has a very special purpose. So, we'll go with something more little combat oriented. If it had any modules on it, which it doesn't. But that's good in a way. I wonder what happened to the modules. Oh well. You have high-powered slots. This is where typically your weapons, a lot of your higher-end remote modules will go. Say, for example, remote repairs. This tends to be where your offensive power lies. These are your medium layers. This is where modules for propulsion would go. Also shields and certain propulsion interdiction modules to hold an enemy down and keep them from running away. And then low power, this is where things like weapon boosters would go, items like armor modules, things of that nature. Just more passive modules end up down here in the low power slots. And then you have rigs, which increase the strength of your ship, increase certain items on your ship for a trade-off. Not all items have a trade-off, but most do. As you can see, this ship modification is designed to increase shield HP at the expense of signature radius, which is kind of like its electronic footprint. The bigger your signature radius, the easier you are to hit. But you can train rigging skills that will allow you to mitigate somewhat. You can only train them to it. You'll only be able to train them to a 2. But you can train skills that help you mitigate some of the side effects. Okay, that was probably a lot to swallow. I've been going for like 20 minutes now. But TLDR is that this is a very complicated game. You are getting a scratch on the surface. This character has been active for 5 years, and I can fly, as you saw in the ship tree, a great many things. You'll be more limited, but there's a downside and upside. Obviously the downside, you can't play with the big shiny toys. Like, where is it? Like, see, I should have went there. That's where all my ships are, but like this guy, the Macarial. Kind of my pride and joy. This is a Navy, this is a pirate faction battleship. And they're very nice. They're also pretty expensive and very skill intensive. So you won't be able to fly anything like that. But you could fly one of these. Aguila. But there's so many more ships that I'm able to fly that I just don't own. I have them because I've had to fly them in the past. The upside is that your ships are very cheap from our perspective. And for a new player, it's going to seem daunting. But they're comparatively cheap. Like, for example, do a little comparison here. I'll show you. Now, I'm in GTA 44, Kadar Navy Assembly Plant, which is basically the trading center. The trading in EVE is not like the auction house in, say, World of Warcraft, where you can put up an order, say, in Orgrimmar, and even over in, the Undercity or Silvermoon, you can pick stuff off of it. The market is regional. And of course, this is the central place. Like literally the central place. So first thing we're going to do, this is the ship that I'm actually sitting in that has no fitting. The Worm, 62 million ISK. That's just for the hull, no modules. So pirate faction ships are even more rare, and they're pretty expensive because they're only really, the blueprint copies only really come off drops. However, the ship that kind of looks like it, that it's based off of, the Merlin, 329,000. And as you can see, people crank these out. I mean, there's 115 up for sale on this cheapest order. So I mean, people buy and sell these all day. In fact, we can look at the price history and find, wow, Someone actually bought 1,000 Merlins yesterday. Let's get a good zoom in on that. Yeah, someone bought 1,000 yesterday. So, I mean, these things do move. The 500 today, but everything is cheap. The modules you'll be using, like say, just Tech 1 railguns, just very basic stuff. Let's see, ship equipment, turrets, hybrids. Now these are the kind of weapons you would use on a Merlin. Let's say we'll go with the big caliber, the 150 millimeter railgun. Your version, 37,500 credits. My version, 672,000 credits. So yeah, you're gonna stumble, but your stuff's gonna be cheap. And if you can get, you can talk to, get a buddy who you join in this game. He can help you make money, show you where you can make money with your limited skill sets, and teach you more about the game. And, the kind of money that would keep a new bro in this game for a month of losses is like a pittance to the veterans. I mean, well, I'll give you an idea. The guy who got me into this game gave me 30 mil when I first started, and it felt like, someone had just handed me a winning lottery ticket, because everything at that level is so cheap. So hopefully you'll be able to, and with the way they've changed the starter missions since we started, you actually get some decent money and some free ships out of it. Plus you get a little bit of broadening of your horizons. Plus there are tons of groups that help new players that are new player centric in just about every sector of space, actually. But we'll cover those organizations. I'm going to try to get an exhaustive list together and put that up. But now that we've been rambling for almost 28 minutes, I think it's time to call it a day. I'm Marzio99, and I'll see you next time.